You've got 30 days to take those panels down or face the consequences. That's what Angela Hartford, the HOA president with the platinum bob and a voice like a smoke alarm, shouted across my driveway as I was unloading groceries. I wasn't even surprised. She'd never liked me. Or my solar panels. I'm Xander Jacobs. I'm not exactly the HOA's favorite guy, mostly because I read the bylaws before I moved in. Angela hated that. She liked people who didn't ask questions, easier to bully. I installed the solar panels 3 months ago. Permits filed, city approved, no violations. Angela didn't care. They're an eyesore, she huffed that day, arms crossed like she was about to write me a ticket. They reflect sunlight into my bedroom. Angela, I said, your house is on the opposite side of the street. You'd need a periscope to even see my roof. She didn't flinch. The HOA board voted they're not allowed. Which section of the CCRs? She blinked, clearly not expecting that. Section 4.7. Something about aesthetics. I knew for a fact that section had been voided after the state passed a renewable energy protection law. I printed it and stuck it to her mailbox the next morning. That's when the threats started. First, she sent me a bogus fine for unauthorized roof modifications. Then came the petty letters claims that my panels were lowering property values and disturbing neighborhood harmony. Whatever that meant, but the funniest part, she didn't know I was a contract lawyer. Corporate litigation, to be exact. I'd spent the last 15 years tearing apart contracts for a living, and I had just as much time and energy to tear apart the HOA's little power trip, so I started documenting everything. Every letter, every ridiculous citation, every time she or her lackey Brent showed up uninvited on my property with a clipboard and a scowl. Last week, she escalated. She marched right up to my porch, ignored the no trespassing sign, and handed me a final notice. You have until the end of the month, she said, or we'll take legal action. I looked her dead in the eye and said, perfect, I've been waiting for this. She looked confused. Excuse me? See, Angela, I've already drafted a response and a countersuit. You're about to cost this HOA $50,000 in legal fees. Minimum, her face twitched. You're bluffing. I stepped back into my house, came back with a folder and handed it to her inside. My formal letter to the HOA's insurance provider, outlining Angela's personal liability for violating state energy statutes, along with a pre-filed complaint ready to go to the county courthouse. She left without saying another word, and that's when things really started heating up. 3 days after I handed Angela the folder, I came home from work to find a ladder propped against the side of my garage and a guy in a neon vest standing on my roof. Not a contractor I hired, not someone from the city, just up there, messing with my solar panels. I parked, got out of my car, and shouted, "Hey, what are you doing?" The man nearly dropped his wrench. He climbed down fast, muttering something under his breath. When he reached the ground, I got a better look. Mid-50s, gray beard, wearing an HOA-issued badge clipped to his vest. I was told to inspect for structural violations, he said, avoiding eye contact. Who told you? He hesitated. Board President Hartford, you got a work order. No, but then you just trespassed and tampered with private property. Leave now. And don't take the ladder. He stood there for a beat, clearly unsure what to do. Now, I repeated, pointing to the sidewalk. He finally grabbed his ladder and walked off. I waited until he was out of sight, then went straight to the garage and checked the feed from the roof cams. Sure enough, he'd fiddled with the panel mounts, loosened 2 bolts. Just enough to cause long-term damage. That was no inspection. That was sabotage. I pulled the footage, time-stamped it, and emailed it to my friend Kara, who worked in the district attorney's office. Then I called the non-emergency line and filed a police report. Officer Delgado arrived 20 minutes later, took my statement, and reviewed the footage. This isn't just trespassing, he said. If your panels were damaged, this could be felony-level vandalism. He took the case seriously. Said it would go to the Property Crimes Division by morning. I thanked him, then sent a second letter to the HOA, this time invoking criminal liability. I attached the police report number, the footage stills, and a warning. Any further unauthorized access would result in a restraining order. By the following evening, things had shifted. My neighbor, Juliet, who'd always kept her distance, knocked on my door with a Tupperware of brownies and a nervous look. "I heard what happened," she said. "Angela told the garden committee you tried to attack one of the inspectors. Did she now?" I opened the door wider and invited her in. "Want to see the footage?" She did. And when she left 40 minutes later, she took a copy with her on a flash drive and a whole new opinion of what was going on. And just like that, the neighborhood started tilting. The next morning, I woke up to find Brent, the HOA's self-proclaimed compliance officer, standing across the street, hands on hips, glaring at my house like it owed him money. I didn't say anything. I just waved, then walked back inside and printed the cease and desist letter I drafted with my firm's letterhead. I didn't hand-deliver it. I had it served by a process server, at his work, in front of his boss. That same afternoon, I noticed something. The HOA website had gone offline. Completely scrubbed. No minutes, no contact info, no board email addresses. Like someone pulled the plug in a panic. Too late. The next HOA meeting was scheduled for that Thursday evening, and I showed up 15 minutes early with a stack of folders, one for every resident who attended. I brought printed copies of the state energy statute, photos of the guy on my roof, the police report, and a breakdown of the legal costs the HOA would be liable for if they continued down this path. Angela walked in late, flanked by Brent and two other board members I'd never formally met. She looked surprised to see me, then more surprised to see the thick folders in everyone's hands. She opened the meeting with a forced smile. "Thank you all for coming." "Tonight we'll be discussing—" "Actually," I interrupted, "before we get to the agenda, I'd like to make a motion." Angela looked ready to explode. "You're not on the board," she snapped. "True," I said. "But according to Section 8 of the HOA's own charter, any homeowner in good standing can request a floor motion if supported by a third of attending members. Shall we count hands?" I didn't have to. The room lit up with raised arms, at least 2/3 of them. "I motion for a vote of no confidence in the current board," I said, "effective immediately due to negligence, harassment, misuse of funds, and potential criminal activity." Brent stood. "This is nonsense." I turned to the room. "Would anyone like to hear the audio from the last board meeting? The one where Angela authorized an unauthorized inspection and potential removal of legally installed panels." I held up my phone. Angela lunged forward. "That recording is illegal." "Nope," I said calmly. "Single-party consent state, and I was there." "You just didn't see my phone on record." Silence. I hit play and let her own words fill the room. "Just make it look like an inspection. Loosen a few bolts if you have to, he'll never prove it." By the time the recording ended, even Brent had taken a step away from her. I didn't press the vote. I didn't need to. Angela stood up, grabbed her bag, and stormed out without another word. Brent followed, but not before someone from the back asked, "Still want to fine him for saving electricity?" Laughter rippled through the room. The remaining board members stayed. One of them, an older guy named Thomas, volunteered to serve as interim president until a full election could be held. The others agreed. I stayed quiet for most of it, letting the community do what it needed to do. But before I left, I handed Thomas the full legal breakdown. "Just in case Angela tries anything else," I said. He glanced through it, eyes widening slightly. "She really could have bankrupted the HOA over this. She still might." As I walked back to my house, Juliet waved from her porch. "You know," she called, "we've got a neighborhood barbecue this weekend. You should come." "Only if it's solar-powered," I said. She laughed. "We'll make it happen." And just like that, the tide had turned, but Angela wasn't done yet, not by a long shot. 2 days after the meeting, a plain white sedan pulled into my driveway. The man who stepped out wore a gray suit, thin, framed glasses, and carried a leather briefcase. He didn't introduce himself with a handshake, just held out a business card. Detective Langley. Property Crimes Division. I stepped aside and let him in. He didn't waste time. We reviewed the footage you submitted. The man on your roof, Wayne Mercer, has a prior arrest for impersonating a contractor. He's not licensed, never has been. I raised an eyebrow. And Angela sent him up there. Langley nodded. We interviewed him this morning. He flipped fast, said he was told to make it look like a violation so the HOA could escalate enforcement. I walked to my kitchen counter and slid over a folder I hadn't opened since the day after the sabotage. Here, I said. That's a copy of the maintenance logs from the solar install team. They flagged the tampered bolts, said if I hadn't caught it, the panels could have ripped free in a storm. Langley opened it, scanned a few pages, then leaned back. We're opening a felony case. Attempted property damage, conspiracy to commit fraud, and criminal trespass. Angela Hartford's name is on the report. She's being brought in for questioning Thursday. Just a heads up, she's already lawyered up. I crossed my arms. Let her lawyer explain why she authorized a felon to sabotage clean energy. Langley gave a tight nod, then stood. We'll need to photograph the panels ourselves, for evidence in case there's a trial. As he left, I watched from the window. He didn't look back. Later that afternoon, a quiet knock came at my door this time. It was David, the guy 3 houses down. Usually he kept to himself, except during Halloween when he turned his front yard into a haunted pirate ship. He looked different now, tense, like he was about to confess something. I need to talk to you, he said, about Angela and the HOA account. I let him in, and he immediately opened a folder of his own. I was the treasurer until last month. I resigned after she started making withdrawals without board approval. Said it was for legal contingencies, but the amounts didn't match anything we'd talked about. He showed me the ledger. Over $37,000 had been moved into an account under a company name, Sunvale Neighborhood Preservation, LLC. A quick search showed it wasn't a preservation group, it was a shell company, registered to Angela's cousin in Nevada. She redirected HOA funds into a fake business? I asked, flipping through the records. David nodded. And used it to pay for that guy Wayne. Plus, I think she tried to reimburse herself for the legal fees she's racking up now. That changed everything. You report this yet? He hesitated. I didn't want to get caught up in it. I get it, I said. But now that there's a felony investigation, you need to hand this over. He nodded slowly. Yeah, you're right. I'll meet with the detective tomorrow. As he left, I scanned the documents again. The transfers were timed just days before each escalation, right before bogus fines were issued, right before the roof sabotage. She'd been building a paper trail, probably confident no one would ever audit her. That evening, Juliet and a handful of neighbors gathered in my driveway. Some brought folding chairs. Others just stood and listened as I explained what David had shown me. She stole from all of us, I said, and used what she took to fund criminal acts. Deborah, the retired nurse who lived next to the park, spoke up. Can the board sue her? They won't have to. If the DA adds embezzlement to the charges, she's looking at prison time. Murph, the ex-carpenter with the deck that could survive a hurricane, cracked his knuckles. We should file a civil suit anyway. She tried to bankrupt the HOA time we returned the favor. A few others nodded. Juliet stepped forward. Then we'll pass a motion at the next meeting, file a separate claim, freeze that shell company account before she drains it. I looked around. These were the same neighbors Angela had controlled with threats and fear. Now they were organizing. The next morning, I received an email from Kara, my friend, at the DA's office. She'd attached a scan of the preliminary charges filed against Angela. Felony vandalism, conspiracy to commit fraud, misappropriation of funds, and criminal breach of fiduciary duty. The arraignment was set for the following week. I sent a copy of the scan to Thomas, the interim president, along with a short message. This is your proof. Time to clean house. That same day, Brent, Angela's bulldog, put up a for sale sign in his yard. No announcement, no goodbyes. Just packed up and left. I didn't blame him. His name was on a few of the letters I'd submitted to the police. The neighborhood didn't waste time. Juliet organized a petition to bar any future board member from having financial control without independent oversight. Murph volunteered to build a locked drop box for ballots. Deborah offered to manage the local newsletter again, just like she had 10 years ago. By Saturday, the whole block looked different. Not physically, but the air felt lighter. Kids were riding bikes again. People waved. Someone even chalked a cartoon solar panel on the sidewalk with the words, "Power to the people." Sunday afternoon, a black SUV pulled up outside Angela's house. 2 plainclothes officers escorted her to the vehicle. She didn't resist. Just got in, eyes fixed straight ahead like she was trying to disappear. She didn't come back. That night, Thomas called me. She drained the HOA account, left it with just under $90. I felt my jaw tighten. Did the DA freeze the shell company? Not yet. But Juliet's already filed an emergency injunction. We think we can claw some of it back. I leaned back in my chair, staring at the ceiling. I'll help draft the civil suit, no charge. Thomas paused. You sure? Angela tried to destroy my home over a grudge. I'm not letting her walk away with a dime. That week, the HOA voted to approve the lawsuit. More than 80% of residents signed on. David returned as treasurer temporarily under strict oversight. Juliet was voted into the board. Thomas agreed to stay on permanently. Deborah managed the communications. Nobody wanted absolute power. That was the point. By the end of the month, the solar panels on my roof were inspected one last time, this time by a state-certified installer who laughed when he saw how secure they were. These things are rock solid, he said. Looks like someone knew what they were doing. Yeah, I replied. And someone else didn't. He gave me a little wave and drove off. That evening, as the sun dipped low and the panels soaked up the last rays of daylight, I stood on my porch and watched the neighborhood. No more threats. No more clipboard patrols. Just the quiet hum of a block that had finally taken its power back. The week following Angela's arrest was a whirlwind of legal filings, budget audits, and community meetings. The interim board didn't waste time. They brought in an independent forensic accountant named Lyle to comb through every transaction the HOA had made under Angela's presidency. Lyle wore suspenders, carried a calculator older than the internet, and didn't say a single unnecessary word. But by the end of his 3rd day, he had something no one expected. He found 2 sets of books. Not one, but 2 complete ledgers, one public, one private. The public one matched what was reported to the residents. The private one, that's where the truth lived. Thousands in consulting fees paid to the shell company. Checks made out to vendors that didn't exist. Even HOA-funded security lighting that turned out to be renovations at Angela's own home, billed as community safety upgrades. Thomas called an emergency meeting the moment Lyle finished his report. This time, it was held at the local library in a proper conference room, no folding chairs, no lukewarm coffee in plastic thermoses. Word had traveled fast. Nearly every homeowner showed up, including a few who hadn't attended a meeting in years. Thomas stood at the front, voice steady but low. We knew about the attempted sabotage. We knew she misused funds. But what we didn't know, what none of us could have known, is that Angela had been operating a completely unauthorized financial system within the HOA for over 2 years. Gasps rippled through the crowd. A woman in the back muttered a quiet expletive under her breath. Lyle stood next to Thomas and gave a slow, deliberate nod. She set up dummy invoices, Lyle said, and issued payments to companies that don't exist. She used those funds for personal expenses, travel, home improvements, even a private attorney retainer 5 months before anyone ever challenged her authority. Why would she need a lawyer that early? Someone asked. I raised my hand. Because she knew the energy statute overrode the HOA bylaws. She was preparing for a fight before it even started. Juliet stood, holding a folder. We also discovered this, she said. Angela submitted a fraudulent insurance claim last spring claiming community storm damage. The payout, just under $12,000, was deposited into the same shell account. That's when the room shifted. It wasn't just about abuse of power anymore, it was insurance fraud, mail fraud. A deliberate financial scheme. Murph leaned forward, arms on the table. So what's next? I've already sent the full report to the district attorney, Thomas said. They're expanding the charges. We've also sent copies to the state's Department of Insurance Fraud Division and the IRS. No one needed to ask why the IRS. If Angela had been funneling funds through a fake company, she hadn't paid taxes on them, I added. It's not just about pressing charges. We're filing a civil suit too. The HOA can recover damages, and if we're successful, we'll be able to begin restitution for the stolen funds. The vote was unanimous. That night, Juliet dropped by my house with a bottle of bourbon and a quiet look in her eyes. She nearly destroyed everything, she said. The neighborhood. Our trust in each other. She didn't count on people paying attention, I said. That was her mistake. Juliet glanced toward the street where a few kids were racing scooters under the glow of the street lamps. You think she'll do time? I didn't answer right away. I'd been in courtrooms long enough to know how unpredictable sentencing could be, but Angela had gone too far, left too many fingerprints, involved too many agencies. Yeah, I said finally, I think she will. 2 weeks later, the grand jury returned an indictment, 12 counts. Wire fraud, embezzlement, falsifying corporate documents, and insurance fraud among them. She was denied bail due to flight risk. Apparently, she'd attempted to wire money to a different cousin in Arizona the day before her arrest. The court date was set for early summer. In the meantime, the community transformed. The HOA board was expanded to include 2 new members, both elected via blind ballot. One was a bilingual schoolteacher named Rosa. The other was a retired Air Force mechanic named Dennis, who volunteered to inspect every community fence and light post for free. We hired a new firm to manage the HOA finances, an external company with a flawless record and strict quarterly audits. Juliet started a neighborhood website with open-source access to budgets, meeting minutes, and even upcoming votes. Transparency wasn't just a buzzword anymore, it was policy. At the next community event, held at the park near the south entrance, people brought potluck meals and lawn games. Someone set up a projector and played a movie on a bedsheet tied between 2 trees. Nobody mentioned Angela. Nobody had to. 3 months later, I was called as a witness in the trial. I walked into the courthouse in a charcoal suit, carrying a flash drive with the roof footage and a binder of printed emails. The prosecutor, a young woman named Nora with a voice like steel wrapped in velvet, met me in the hallway. She's pleading not guilty, she said. But once we present the dual ledger system and the shell company registrations, it's going to unravel fast. I took the stand late in the afternoon. I testified about the threats, the fake fines, the man on my roof, the emails that followed. Nora asked precise questions. The defense attorney tried to paint it as a misunderstanding, but when he asked if I had a grudge, I simply said, "No, I had evidence." That night, I got a call from Kara. They're offering Angela a deal 5 years, no parole, full restitution, and a lifetime ban from serving on any board involving public funds. She taking it? She will. Her attorney knows the jury won't be kind. Angela signed the deal the next morning. When restitution payments began arriving, small checks began appearing in the HOA's rebuilt account. Juliet posted a progress tracker on the community site. Recovered to date, $3,117. The number grew slowly but steadily. A month later, we installed solar-powered streetlights at the neighborhood entrances. They were paid for with a grant. Rosa helped us apply for one that Angela had rejected 3 years prior because she claimed it gave too much say to the city. The lights were sleek, modern, and efficient. Kids started calling one of them Xander's Beacon. I pretended to be annoyed, but secretly I liked it. By summer's end, the HOA was solvent again. New bylaws were passed that restricted unilateral board decisions, capped legal expenditures without a community vote, and mandated external audits. The phrase, Angela years started floating around as shorthand for everything the community vowed never to become again. On a warm Friday evening in late July, Juliet hosted a celebration in her backyard. Tables were lined with homemade food, string lights swayed gently in the breeze, and someone brought a guitar. It wasn't loud or flashy, just neighbors being neighbors, finally free. Murph raised a toast with a lemonade can. "To Xander," he said. "And to never letting anyone tell us we can't put the sun to good use." Everyone laughed. I raised my glass too, to transparency, I said. And to reading the fine print. As the sun dipped behind the rooftops, and the solar panels caught their last golden rays, I leaned back in my chair, surrounded by the sound of clinking glasses, quiet laughter, and the hum of a community that had taken its power back literally and figuratively. No more threats, no more abuse, just light.